The question has been running for quite a few weeks now. What's David Moyes going to do when Mikel Antonio gets injured? Well, we found out. And it wasn't just that, because David Moyes got presented with a whole load of other problems as well. Now, many will think that the Antonio issue was a problem of David Moyes' own making. It was so obvious, so transparent it was going to happen that surely David Moyes would have had a plan in place. Personally, I think that plan was Yarmolenko. So it gives him an additional problem for this game against Sheffield United, which is Yarmolenko is also injured. I mean, they were dropping like flies, our players, against Manchester United. You've also got to add into the equation that Angelo Ogbonna, who is the very fabric around which the defence is woven, he was out as well. What does David Moyes want to do? At this point, David Moyes wants to move to 5 at the back, but that presents his own problem. Because David Moyes likes Arthur Masuaku to play at left wing back when we play 5 at the back. An additional problem. For each and every problem with which he was presented, David Moyes found a solution. And before everybody says it's just Sheffield United have been in good form. Even their recent games against Chelsea, a lot of their recent games, Man City was another one, they were quite close. Sheffield United are not in the habit of getting thumped 3-0. Now, I understand the naysayers will turn around and say, well, Fabianski had to produce some saves and it could have been a draw. And all of this stuff is true. But at some point, you've got to start giving the manager a bit of credit. And I do know the vast majority do, yet still there was I was aware that there was an awful lot of criticism of Moyes before this game, which is why I said before the game, I'm sort of done criticising him. I looked at that team sheet against Aston Villa. I saw Fredericks on the right and I thought, oh no, Fredericks and then Soufal, surely this can't be the way. Do you know what? I thought it was going to be a defensive display. Well, it didn't. We scored 3 goals against Aston Villa. I thought we were absolutely brilliant. So when I saw this team sheet going, I thought, I'm not going to criticise it. I'm going to keep an open mind. I'm going to see how we perform. We're going to see what David Moyes' answer is to the conundrum presented by not having a striker. His decision. He wants to save his money. Okay, that was fine. I get that. I would have preferred him to bring in a loan player. I still probably think he should have brought in a loan player. But what was David Moyes' answer? Well, David Moyes' answer was twofold. I'm going to talk about 2 players here. Number 1 is Jarrod Bowen and number 2 is Jesse Lingard. I should have gone 1 and 2 the other way around. I was probably going to speak about Jesse Lingard first because this was the answer. This was how he was going to do it. Jesse Lingard was a player that Moyes clearly coveted and clearly wanted for the whole of the transfer window. And he is sensational. I thought massive performance against Aston Villa, clearly adrenaline fueled. Against Fulham, he dipped. He looked like a player that hadn't played football for a while. Now we're seeing some fitness, but I still don't think it's 100%. I think we're seeing fitness of Jesse Lingard. I think we're seeing him at 90%. It just makes you wonder, what can this guy do when he's 100% fit? Because he is commanding the game. He really is. He has an awareness of space which I have not seen from a lot of other players. He just finds pockets of space in which to receive the ball. But if somehow he gets the ball into a position and he's not in space, he will then travel with the ball into space, but not in a way that I think we're conventionally used to seeing. He won't travel with a ball like Benrahma travels with a ball, like Lanzini travels with a ball. What he'll do is he'll slow the game down and he will fool the defender into thinking that he's going at a walking pace. Then he'll just pick up his speed and he will move into space. There was one point in the second half, it was after the Diop goal, we were defending, we had the ball. He carried the ball all the way up and won us a corner. Without ever at any point me thinking he was faster than anybody else. When he gets into a race, he seems to slow down, then start up, then slow down, then start up. He's not rapid. He's not slow, but he's not the fastest player on the pitch. Yet his energy levels and his intelligence just seem to be absolutely phenomenal. I gave it when we did our Patreon, video on the player ratings. I likened it to a magician. There's 2 things you can do with a magician. Number 1 is the sleight of hand. That's how you hide the coin or you hide the card or whatever the case may be. The other one is the misdirection. That's something going over here. You make everybody look that way. Hopefully you just did it then. But you get what I mean. It's almost the same with football. Whereas we know what a pirouette is or a nutmeg is or a boner. I never know if it's a boner or a bonner. There's a set number of tricks which are basically ball manipulation. And then there's just some other stuff, which is game intelligence, moving into space, giving, I like this phrase, giving someone the eyes. You know, look, it's misdirection basically. And Jesse Lingard, I'm pretty sure when Jesse Lingard is doing his training drills, I'm not saying he's not skillful. He clearly is skillful, but I don't think he's as skillful as Benrahma. He's probably not as skillful as Lanzini. There are probably people within the squad who are as skillful or more skillful than Jesse Lingard, but that's not it. That doesn't tell the full story of what he's doing. And I'm watching him and learning in many respects, trying to learn what he's all about. And you can understand why Moyes wanted to get him, because what he's getting this blend of work rate and a justice player with the ability to find pockets of space. Now, I don't know. I've not watched Manchester United anywhere near enough with Jesse Lingard in the team to know how often Jesse Lingard has played as a striker, or if what we want to call it is the false number 9. I don't know, all right? But I assume it's not very often. So how does David Moyes know that he is going to dovetail well into this position? I'm not sure he was a false number 9, by the way. I think Bowen was possibly more of the striker than Lingard. We'll get onto that in a second. But how does Moyes know that he's going to be able to do this job? I think it's just his awareness of space and it's just his intelligence. He's a bit like, I gave you the example of Teddy Sheringham the other day as an intelligent footballer. I think Jesse Lingard is an intelligent footballer. I think it's easy to laugh at him with the Instagram posts and the funny fashion. Who am I to talk about funny fashion? But you know, the leery, colourful jackets and all the rest of it. It's easy to be fooled by the circus that is Jesse Lingard and think he's a clown, he's a fool. Well, he's not. He's clearly bright as a button, and his technique is sound. And he continues to get into the box. And I think he's just one of those players, it almost doesn't matter. He could probably play in 4 or 5 different positions for West Ham. Or anyone else, just hopefully it stays West Ham. That's a conversation for another day, but we certainly do hope that that the transfer is made permanent at some point. Look, it's 3 games now, and I don't want to lose him, put it that way. But my point is he can play in 4 or 5 different positions, midfield or an attack. And he will, whatever position he's in, he will get into the box and he will cause issues. He will cause problems for the opposition. It's amazing. In just a couple of games, I think he's made himself undroppable. I'll give him a mitigation for the Fulham game. I already have, okay? But what we saw against Villa and what we saw, so basically played 3 games. There's 2 man of the match performances. If you're in agreement, he was man of the match against Sheffield United, of course. I don't think there's much. I don't think there's much argument there. I mean, he was running the game. He was absolutely running the game. It didn't want to come off. Clearly, Moyes had to get him off, whatever it was, 81, 82 minutes, something like that. The game was won. The game was won by that point, and the game was won with a massive contribution from Lingard himself. He's going to score plenty of goals as he keeps shooting. Absolutely wonderful. And I just think you look at the way he links with players, and you look at the way he wants to shoot, and he wants to try things, and he teases the opposition to challenge him and to tackle him, and then he sort of moves one way and then goes the other and flicks the ball. And a lot of the stuff is done without him often moving the ball that much. Absolutely magnificent. The other player I want to talk about in this instance is Jarrod Bowen. And Jarrod Bowen's taken an awful lot of stick over recent times. I say an awful lot of stick. It's not an awful lot. It's just, despite our wonderful run and where we find ourselves in the league, and you can sort of understand it against, you know, when we go out of the cup and things like that, but I think the team and the management and a lot of the players have been getting more criticism than a team that's basically been around 4th, 5th or 6th for the past few weeks, which is what we have, deserve. I think, bearing in mind we've gone from relegation contenders last season to, let's be fair, Champions League contenders, it sounds weird. We probably won't get it, I know that. I think with that in mind, I think the team, the players and the manager's decisions have been getting, I think, more criticism than they deserve, really. I think if you'd have offered us this, if you'd have said this last season that we'd be in this position, no one would believe you. If you'd have then turned around and said we'll be in this position and we'd be getting, and the players would be getting a load of stick for it, well, maybe you would have believed it. Maybe it was quite predictable. But Jarrod Bowen has taken his fair share of criticism. I think the thing is, we micro-analyse, and we're as guilty as anyone. I upload a video every day, so clearly we've got to find something to talk about every day. Things get micro-analysed, for sure. So I think in recent times, he's been accused of travelling with a ball, not getting his head up quickly enough. I said that, certainly, in one of the recent games. I don't think it'd be much of an issue if David Moyes hadn't picked out Ben Rama for doing it, but you think actually Ben Rama gets picked out for doing it and Bowen's doing the same thing. But anyway, Moyes clearly had a plan for Bowen in this game. And I looked at it, and what you're always going to need is somebody who can play with their back to goal. I thought he was too small. Yeah, there he was. Literally backing into defenders, keeping them behind him, and sometimes winning the ball. He contested headers. He won headers against people who were, I don't know, nearly a foot bigger than him in some instances. I mean, this is really quite an impressive thing to do. And David Moyes is clearly earmarked. He needs somebody in his team, which is why I think he probably wanted to initially choose Yarmolenko. He needs someone in his team for when we attack that can play with his back to goal. I can't think of anybody else. There's a lot of people saying, why didn't Ben Rama and so why wasn't Ben Rama in the head of Bowen? Well, it was not a direct comparison in that formation, because no way that Ben Rama is going to play with his back to goal, backing into a centre-half and trying to win a header. It's just not what he's going to do. So bearing in mind that was the case, I thought Bowen did really, really well. And I thought it was really interesting at the end, during the end of the game, not during the end of the game, at the end of the game. If it had been during, we would have been in trouble. Moyes would have got a red card if he'd have walked onto the pitch. But at the end of the game, he made a beeline for Bowen, put his arm round him. The cameras picked it up. They weren't, sometimes they cover their mouths like that. They weren't covering their mouths. Did me no good at all because I can't lip read. Don't know. But it was clearly, I can see when people are smiling and got their arm around each other. Clearly there were nice things being said. Clearly David Moyes thought that Jarrod Bowen was doing a really good job, and he was very, very happy. And I think we're going to see a little bit more of that. But I do think he acclimatised well. He played the 90 minutes. He's normally getting taken off. He's substituted all the time, isn't he? Is he not the most substituted player in the Premier League? Something like that, whatever that stat is. I think Moyes found himself with a conundrum, and this was his solution. So when he's been saying all this time, I don't want to spend the money yet, I want to save this money for the summer. I've got plans. These are all Moyes' words. I will look from within the squad to find the solutions that we have at the moment. This is it. This is the solution. This is what he was alluding to. That was quite impressive, I have to say. Look, we're about to enter a little run of games where we're going to play Tottenham, we're going to play some other teams. We'll find out a little bit more about ourselves, but this is not the start of the season. We're roughly 2/3 into the season, yet there we are. As I record this now, Chelsea are beating Newcastle United. Chelsea are going to go 4th, we'll be 5th. But it's a really, really solid 5th. I said a little while ago that I thought if we carried on, it's just before the halfway point, I said if we mirrored our first half of the season form in the second half of the season, we'd be getting 64, 65 points, something like that. I said I wasn't sure if that was going to happen, but I felt we'd probably get between 50 and 65 points. Now, obviously, that's quite a big, quite a big gap to get into there, isn't it? I mean, that's quite a large swing in terms of the league placings. Somebody said, and I do apologise. I always read the comments. Don't always get to reply every single one, but I always read the comments on there. And somebody said, he said, be honest with you, I've been really disappointed with 50 points. This was a few games ago, and it does look like that's absolutely right. 50 points would be disappointing. So where are we going to get to? Look, I don't know. I certainly feel it's going to be in excess of 50 points. But what I do know is the solution that David Moyes came up with, and whilst there were some moans and groans that Lanzini was starting, whilst he didn't you know, did Lanzini get an assist? No, or anything like that. The system worked. It worked. I was going to say about Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson, I'll tell you what, later on today, I'll do a video. We'll discuss Ben Johnson and a couple of the others. I think that's probably the easiest way to do it, to keep this video, so it's not a 20-minute video. But the system worked. And it worked an absolute treat. And really, we broke Sheffield United's hearts. And it's a funny one, Sheffield United, because the bottom three are a bit cut adrift. The team that look like they might be able to manage it are quite possibly Fulham, and Fulham would be absolutely delighted because Newcastle have lost, of course. But Sheffield United weren't in bad form. And I was going to say there won't be too many teams that beat Sheffield United 3-0. Maybe they will now, but that's not the team that we faced. We faced a team that have played really, really well in their recent games. And Moyes had a problem, and he came out with a solution. And there we are, bouncing back. Once again, we lose a game and we bounce back. I really ought to do this video at some point and do this research and have a look, which is the suspicion is that David Moyes, in both stints at West Ham, doesn't lose back-to-back games.